Oh my God, it's the coolest thing ever. Hey guys, have you heard of Goldbelly? Well, check this out. It's this amazing site where they ship the most iconic famous foods from restaurants across the country anywhere nationwide. I've never found a more perfect gift than food. They ship Chicago deep dish pizza, New York bagels, Maine lobster rolls, and even Ina Garten's famous cakes. Seriously. So if you're looking for a gift for the food lover in your life, head to goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT.
Support comes from ServiceNow. We're for people doing the fulfilling work they actually want to do. That's why this ad was written and read by a real person and not AI. You know what people don't want to do? Boring, busy work. Now with AI agents built into the ServiceNow platform, you can automate millions of repetitive tasks in every corner of your business, IT, HR, and more, so your people can focus on the work that they want to do. That's putting AI agents to work for people. It's your turn. Visit servicenow.com.
Hello, this is Simon Brew. I'm the editor of Film Stories magazine, and a very warm welcome to a very special episode of the Film Stories podcast.
Come with me.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
And movies that had stories.
That the story just sucks them in.
This is just the beginning.
Stories. We would be honored if you would join us.
Hello, and a very warm welcome to Film Stories with Simon Brew. I am Simon Brew, as always. That's everything you need to know about me. The aim of the podcast, though, was given away by the title. I'm here to talk about films, and I talk about the stories of films. I talk about production stories, development stories, marketing stories, release stories, all the ingredients, really, that go towards making the films that we know and sometimes love, just that, the films that we know and sometimes love. The films I tend to cover on this podcast lean more towards the mainstream than anything else. Films I'm interested in or invested in to some degree. I try not to do snark. I try not to punch down. This podcast is a celebration of cinema and a real appreciation of just how difficult it is to get a film off the ground. What you've happened upon here, though, is one of my occasional special episodes of the podcast where I bring in a filmmaker or a performer to talk about their body of work or their latest release, and you get a little bit of both of those in this particular episode, because I'm delighted to say that I was joined by Rob Delaney in London recently for a conversation in and around his latest movie, Deadpool and Wolverine, although, as you're about to hear, we also managed to get in a bit of Catastrophe. We talk a bit about Mission Impossible. We talk about a bit about Paul Feig, about his book as well, about the loss of his child as well. I should be upfront about that's something that comes up in this conversation too. Deadpool and Wolverine is now playing in cinemas around the world, and ahead of my chat with Rob Delaney, they showed us 25, 30 minutes of the film. I hadn't seen the full film at that point. I've seen the full film now. But just bear that in mind when you're hearing the conversation. I don't think there's any more setup than's required other than that. So I'm going to set it all up with I say there's no more setup, and then I said, I'm going to set it all up. I noticed that too. Here is a clip from the trailer from Deadpool and Wolverine. It's a bit potty-mouthed, as is this chat you're about to hear, and then you'll hear my conversation with Rob Delaney, the other side of this.
I know I turn everything into a joke, but I care. Or I want to use that for something important. I waited a long time for this team up. In my world, you're well regarded. You were an X-Man. Fuck that, you were the X-Man. The Wolverine. He's a hero in my world.
Yeah, well, he ain't shit in mine.
That was a clip from, it's Deadpool and Wolverine, I think. I should know that. Yeah, let's call it that. From Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm joined by one of its stars, neither Deadpool nor Wolverine, but nonetheless, I'm joined by Rob Delaney for a Film Stories podcast special. Hello, Rob Delaney. How are you?
Thanks, good to meet you.
It's good to meet you too. You're looking far better than me as well. I mean, I should be upfront from the start. I've spent a week binging you. And so I've watched Catastrophe for the first time over the last week. I've read Heart That Works for the first time over the last week. I've listened to you on Desert Island Discs
Oh my
for the
gosh.
last week. And then I've watched, I think they showed us 34 minutes of Deadpool and Wolverine. And so I don't usually start a conversation like this, but what do you actually like to talk about when in some kind of an environment like this?
I mean, I guess I like to talk about how things are made, maybe how the sausage is made, I
Yeah,
suppose. The motives for the sausage, the hunger that led to thinking of the sausage. So yeah, I guess the creative process. I've just been writing for the past 2.5 weeks. I've been in an office
yeah,
writing a TV show, and it's so much goddamn fun.
yeah.
Um, and so I'm getting better as I get older of enjoying the lead up and the process. Like I was telling myself, just pause, close your eyes in this room with your writing partner
Yeah.
and assistant, and just realize this is it. This is it. Not it being on the air, not people saying, "Hey, saw your show." This writing it, you
Yeah.
know. And so yeah, that's I suppose that's my favorite stuff to think about.
So I think I read an interview you'd given earlier in the week, and you talked about the writing process. Actually, it's just come back to mind now about how people are almost scared of starting it,
Yeah.
and people are almost intimidated by the idea of just beginning something. Are
Mhm.
you in that headspace, or is that the really fun bit?
Um, yeah, so sort of midway through executing a creative task right now, I guess, and it's as hard for me as it is for anybody, I suppose, to get my butt in the chair. But then once I do, I'm getting better slowly and painfully as I get older at
Yeah,
just starting moving the fingers because it's just about getting started. And I say this and think this a lot, not being afraid to doing a first draft or a first pass that stinks.
yeah.
That's okay. And I mean, I say that a lot, but it's because I have to remind myself, don't be afraid to stink at first. And, the saying you can't polish a turd is not true. You can polish a turd and you can make it beautiful if you take your time and care enough.
I
So,
love the fact we've done turds and sausages so far in our opening one.
wasn't
We're 3.5 minutes in. Have you got? Do you know when they footballers give press conferences and they
yeah.
have phrases that they dare each other to drop
Oh
in?
my God.
Have you got that going?
No, but I should.
That
Yeah.
that would be true. A lot of the time, about I found in my experience, it's the people who tell me you shouldn't be afraid to fail and you should be you should
Yeah.
try things are the ones who don't practice it themselves. Is
Meaning
there
that they are terrified to fail, or when
yeah,
they
they're
quit
very
type
good
thing?
at saying it, but when it
Oh
actually
yeah,
gets in the room themselves, do you get a little bit of that, or can you really go for it?
yeah, sure. I am afraid to fail. Oh yeah, I guess what I would say is be terrified to fail if
Yeah,
you want or don't. But more important is that you just do it. You know what I mean? Uh, that's what courage is. It's of course it's normal to be afraid. You know what I mean? Like if there's a guy outside the door with a hammer.
right now.
But yeah,
Yeah,
but you want to get past him to go get some lunch. You know what I mean? That you can be scared, but you still need a sandwich, so you have to fight the guy with the hammer. So that's my philosophy.
they've very strictly told me on the door, don't ask any personal questions, which
Okay.
I observe. But I
Okay.
do want to say your son's name, if
Please.
you're comfortable with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do want to say Henry's name.
Hmm.
And I was researching you on the train this
Hmm.
morning, and I was just fine tuning all these terrible questions with which I'm
Hmm.
presenting you. And it turned out I was sat next to someone was looking at my screen. So obviously I hid all the porn
Yeah.
and
Good.
all of that.
Uh-huh.
And she said, "Are you interviewing Rob Delaney? Or are you talking to Rob Delaney?" I was just
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, yeah." Then she said, "Oh, my husband loves him." I don't think she loved you, but I think the husband. I mean, it's just like it's kicking you down and giving you a hand up, isn't it? At the same time. But it turned out she's a chief exec. I'm going to name her because I asked her a name at the end. Her name is Sarah Jane. She's a
Mhm.
chief executive working in my neck of the woods around Birmingham Children's Hospital and things like that.
Oh.
And I said, "What should I ask him?"
Hmm.
And she said, "Ask him to tell you just one really ordinary moment." That we talk a lot about Christmas and we talk a lot about like anniversaries and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Just a quiet, ordinary moment. And if you don't mind me reserving, there's a lovely moment in your book,
Mhm.
and I as many people have sat in front of you and said, moved to tears by your book, and nothing. I want to acknowledge all the difficult things that you say in the book that no one says to you. But there's just a picture you painted of Henry. Was it with Oscar? Just snuggling up on the bed, and you were reading a story, and Oscar fell asleep before Henry. So I hope you don't mind me bringing that up.
No,
But
I mean,
are there? Can you just give us an ordinary moment?
I mean, we had a bearded dragon.
I've heard about this.
And
Was it on your wife's? Did she have it when she was giving birth?
she did.
Yeah.
She kind of, wore the bearded dragon on her shoulder when she was in labor. And I guess just the breathing of another being, like, clinging onto her made her feel
There are
good.
other beings available, though, aren't there, than bearded dragons?
Not in our home.
Okay.
Any other things?
Goldfish would be trickier, yeah.
It would be. But Henry loved the bearded dragon, and that was really funny because the bearded dragon is. I thought that non-mammals like didn't like care about like touch and closeness and caressing and stuff, but Jackie seems to, and I don't want to, denigrate reptiles, but she's just
that's the third on your list.
Cozy and cuddly, and she really loved Henry, and it's so weird that we have this friggin' bearded dragon in the house that lived longer than my human son. I mean, you think of so I still love to see Jackie now this morning when I checked to see if she had enough water. But I think about the two of them just playing together, maybe on the kitchen floor, and they were both clearly very happy.
I'm a bit of when there's a conversation in the room, I'm a bit elephant in the room, which is why I kind of talk about stuff as and when it happens. I just wonder, even in environments like this, do you find people are a little unsure how to talk to you? Your candor has been quite something. The fact you've been so open about things, do you detect that at all? Because I've seen you do so many wonderful interviews, but I just wonder if you feel people are tiptoeing around you a little bit.
They can sometimes. I get it. I understand the instinct. Because, it's a privilege for the person hearing about Henry, for me to talk about that.
Yeah.
And then I also have to consider my own inner state. Do I want to, because it can be a big deal, it can be kind of like letting a horse out of a stable or something, and am I up for that? So I understand. I understand people's sensitivity. I don't like judge them for it, or anything like that.
Thank you for letting me talk about it, and and letting me talk about him. And I didn't want to avoid the topic. I did just want to mention him. So I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
They showed me. This is the worst segue I could possibly do because I'm going from your beautiful son to. Which will probably be, everyone will do that today. But they showed me 30 minutes of Deadpool Wolverine today. Of which what I learned from this is you're not in the first 30 minutes an awful lot, but you are present for a few minutes of it. And wearing, I think, is that a spoiler? I don't think I had to sign anything for that.
Might be.
I'm going to bleep that out. So it will just hear you're wearing bleep.
Okay.
That's all people will hear.
I think. Well, we'll leave that up to the powers that be. But I do.
I'm just curious what the pitch was.
Yeah. So I read that in the script, and I was like, oh. And then, but of course they were right. I mean, Ryan and Sean Levy, who directed it, and Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick and Zeb Wells, who wrote it, they knew what they were doing. And so I was definitely nervous to do that. But yes, now I've seen it too, and it's so funny and makes sense and it feels very real. But that was the ultimate, like, that's when I definitely had to trust the process on that one. And I'm so glad that I did, because when I saw that, I was like, yeah, baby, that is some home run stuff right there.
It's going to sound even better now we're beeping it. I mean, that editorial decision we made on the spot, we're just going to put the ambiguity in there. I think so. I don't do many smart things, but we'll go with that. I got the impression, just in terms of film for you, that Deadpool 2 was pretty pivotal.
Oh, big time. Yeah. Big inflection point.
Was it like people realised what you could do and what you could bring to a cinema project? Was that
Well, I think anybody who knew who I was before that, it was from Catastrophe, which was, a show that I was very proud of. but was not expensive and was a domestic, household comedy. And so, and that's a job I gave myself. Nobody
Yeah.
was like, we need this no-name comedian to have his own sitcom.
Yeah.
I said, here's this, and they were like, we'll give you a chance. And then, so then after that, Deadpool was the first thing that somebody else cast me on, saying, "Hey, can this guy do anything else?"
Oh, that's interesting.
And yeah, so thank goodness, I mean, I guess the fact that I've had a career following that and have been cast in other stuff that it worked out. So yeah, Deadpool 2 was a massive milestone in my career, for which I'll forever be grateful to Ryan Reynolds.
So is that where it came from? Was it Ryan Reynolds who sought you out
Yeah.
originally
Mhm.
for that? So I mean, can I go into the nerdy detail of
Please.
that a little bit? So I mean, because I look for like turning points in people's career,
Mhm.
and reading some of the stuff you've done, that just felt something. I'm just wondering what the initial approach was there, and I mean, did you have a relationship with Ryan Reynolds? Were you just kind of almost picked out the blue
Yeah,
as
no,
far as you saw
I
it?
mean, I hadn't met him in person. We'd communicated on Twitter.
Yeah,
He had said some nice things about my show Catastrophe on Twitter,
yeah,
which was great. But yeah, then he reached out and he said, "Hey, there is a part in Deadpool 2 that I'm curious if you'd be interested in playing." And he described it to me, and I said, "Yes, I can be there 20 minutes ago."
yeah.
And yeah, flew out to Vancouver and shot it.
And it was that quick a turnaround.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was pretty quick. It was.
and did you need to see anything of it, or did you just like trust the process?
I just trusted the process. I mean,
Yeah.
I enjoyed the first film so much, and I
Yes,
thought
of
he was
course.
so great that I said, "Yeah, I'm sure." And so and he explained it to me because at the time, the cool thing about the character of Peter, whether somebody else had played it or me, was that they created him for the film. He didn't come out of the
Yeah.
comic books, like Negasonic Teenage Warhead or Wolverine. And so it was so great that they came up with this silly guy who is not a superhero, is just a normal guy. And so yeah, he wasn't like fully baked when I showed up there. So they were very kind to let me kind of offer input on what he could be, and
Yeah.
wound up having a great time.
One of the things about film, of course, and also about television is the permanence of it. And I
Hmm.
say this as someone who started watching Catastrophe this week. I've not
Mhm.
got all to, I've been warned the dark stuff's to come, so I'm still in the
Hmm.
midst of the sex and the hairy backs
Awesome.
at the moment. But do you get, I mean, do you get a sense now, Beans, as you've been putting things out for a little while,
Hmm.
of the long tail of some of the screen work that you've been doing? Do people come up to you and talk about things, jobs that you, as far as you're concerned, you'd completed years ago?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's funny because Catastrophe and Deadpool 2 are the biggest,
Yeah.
the things that you've mentioned. But yeah, I've been so lucky to do stuff since, and stuff that I've had a great time with and stuff. But yeah, those are the big ones, certainly. And I mean, I could have guessed that Deadpool 2, would endure, but the fact that Catastrophe has is enormously satisfying and makes me very happy and grateful that we were able to put something together that people cared about and that they resonated with them. Also, the books that I've written, people
Yeah.
have, but yeah, those are the big ones.
And so if I got some cheap time machine or something and
Hmm.
started spying on 10-year-old Rob Delaney,
Yeah.
A, I should probably be sent to prison.
Yes.
But B, what were you watching? What were the things that were formative to you? What was the art that you were responding to?
So the things that were getting me the most revved up would be Mad Magazine.
Yeah,
Was very important to me. Collecting Garbage Pail
I
Kids
remember that.
trading cards.
Did you watch the film?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I mean, everybody said it sucked, and by that time I was a little. It takes a while to make a film, so I had kind of thrown out of them by the time the
Are you a
film came
fad
out.
man? Is that?
Yeah. And so those things were really important to me. Saturday Night Live was very important to me. Um, and then starting, yeah, by before at 10, I'm not quite freaking out about particular musicians and bands. It's
Yeah.
more the things that are making me laugh and figuring out the mechanisms of humor. Can I say the F word or no? I
Let's
don't.
find out
Oh,
what happens.
okay. Like I remember one time
We
being at
said.
oh yeah, I remember being at a restaurant with my mom, and a guy came in and joined a table whose meal was already in progress. And this is probably I'm not quite 10 here. And a guy comes in, he sits down, he goes, "Sorry, I'm late. I had to park in fucking Tel Aviv." And I was like, "What? Like, we're in Boston, not anywhere near Tel Aviv. That's impossible. He's lying. And it's funny. And he swore." And like, I feel like that guy gave me like the recipe for comedy right in that moment.
Really that nuanced and that small?
Yes, because profanity, fantastic.
Of course, yeah.
A funny name, Tel Aviv. That's a foreign language. It's an incredibly specific detail. So specificity, very important. Musical kind of sound, total dishonesty / exaggeration, and delivered with like bravado. And so whoever that guy was, I'm sure he's died, been dead for a long time now. Maybe he was murdered.
Yep.
And that really was helpful to me. So just seeing things that were funny and made me laugh, things that my mom would do that were outrageous that would make me laugh, me and my sister, entertaining each other on car trips, making each other laugh, doing little skits and sketches and stuff. Yeah, that was the crucible in which it all.
But there were 100 people in that restaurant, right? Something like that. It's interesting, isn't it, that it resonated with one person and just carved out.
Yeah, I mean, and that I was lucky to sat next to me because he didn't yell it. He said it for the benefit of the like two people at the table that he was joining, and it was just so silly and playful and wonderful. So God bless that man.
So if it hadn't been that man and had been some like extreme right wing person, would now you be like leader of the Republican Party?
It was one of those two.
The only two options on the table at 10. And so, I mean, you do Deadpool 2, and I mean, you like talking about the making of things. For us on the outside, the making of a film like that, it's the appearances, it's really slow. In fact, I've been talking to an independent filmmaker today, and they're talking about how they've done one film, a big film where it's half a page a day. They've done just an independent film where they're doing 12 pages a day. Right. And they can't quite balance where they're happy placing. So your two big things, Catastrophe and Deadpool 2, are presumably at opposite ends of the how much we get through in a day-ometer. Is that a thing?
I understand why you would think that.
There's going to be a buck coming.
If we're going to really talk about the sausage, then what we need to say is that Deadpool 2, and this is extremely cool and an extremely important part of its recipe for success, is that Deadpool 2 was made for a lot less money than
I understand that.
Think. Okay. And for that reason, flexibility and adaptability was something that they prized. And it was really important to Ryan in the making of those films. And so Deadpool 2 did feel smaller and move faster than a lot of films that get comparable box office and attention, but in fact was made on a much smaller budget and thus had to be more flexible and move faster. So Deadpool 2 did not feel like certain other gigantic movies that I've been on.
And now you're in the middle of Deadpool and Wolverine, which is said to be, the expectation on it is gigantic. This is going to be the saviour of this year's cinema. You personally are going to save cinema this year.
Yes.
You're good with the gig, yeah?
Yeah.
But clearly, I mean, I remember the first Deadpool, 60 million, complete risk, took them ages to get it through, the leaked footage and all of that. The second one came with added expectations, still quite limited. This one is, we're now in big blockbuster territory, aren't we? We're now in this is preordained.
I don't know what the budget is, but I can say
it's $20 billion. $20
billion. Yeah. Okay, I would have guessed 30, but there was a step up for Deadpool 2 in that some of the sets on Deadpool and Wolverine, I was like, I could live the rest of my life here. There's some stuff, particularly the world that Matthew McFadden's character inhabits, like his place of business was so gorgeous that I was like, yeah, I just want to stay here forever. Whereas on Deadpool 2, that would have been less likely. But so you're going to see some beautiful sights in this film, for sure. And there's even some costume things that you're like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So any money spent on Deadpool Wolverine was money well spent.
Do you ever regret not getting the Tom Hanks role in The Terminal? Because they built a full airport set for that. Wow. You could have just completely just.
Well, I should have been Forrest Gump, I think, because I think that played by an 11-year-old who didn't know anything about acting would have been really good.
Well, it was at the start. Forrest Gump.
Oh fuck! I have to cut that out.
No, that bit's
I haven't seen Forrest Gump. No,
at the very start.
fully
He's
derailed.
genuinely like a 10, 11 year old.
Right. But he should have been the whole way through. When he switched to Tom Hanks, they should have switched to me as a different 11-year-old.
That would be
with a
amazing.
worse
Are
Southern
we
accent.
remaking Forrest Gump?
I think so. Yeah. Zemeckis.
So you talked about some of the big films that you've been in the midst of. One of the joys on the big screen I saw in the last couple of years was Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, and there you are in this. I mean, what I love about that is the escalation of the scene that you're in. Here comes another really interesting phase. Here, I mean, Edward Stern is just sat on the sofa, just like incredible. Can you? I mean, can you just give me some kind of comparison? You talk about the scale of the bigger films. How happy are you in the midst of that?
I'm really happy, honestly. I mean, one of the things I'm happiest about with the career that I've put together so far has been that sometimes I'm the boss and sometimes I'm an employee.
Yeah.
And I really like that. And so also, I don't care how many pages get shot a day. If it's my show that I've written and it is 12 pages a day, great. If it's somebody else's thing, we only do 3/4 of a page because it's so massive, that's also great. Because I don't care about how I feel on a set as much as what the audience feels. So I understand that in these larger films, you have to whatever craft a particular ingredient, differently or whatever to put it together. So I'm not so concerned about like how did I feel expressing my craft that day.
That's my next question.
Yeah. So there are big important similarities between a big project and a small project, in that you just get to the same place by a different route.
Are you able to bring family and stuff to your film sets as well? I'm asking this a lot of filmmakers at the moment, just to try and demystify this whole perception that there's a church and state about family and work.
Oh, okay. I don't do it in that. I mean, sometimes like I brought my youngest to sets and stuff because like during the pandemic, like if I had to go to a different country and couldn't come back, I mean, there was a movie I did where I was sent back to Canada, where I do not live, and I was going to have to be there for 8 weeks, and I would never sign up for a job where I had to be away for 8 weeks. But because of quarantine laws, you couldn't fly back and forth. So I was like, I'm taking my 2-year-old. So we just split our family in half. My wife kept 2 kids, and I just brought one. But I was like, I can't survive 8 weeks without my family. So I brought its youngest emissary, and he was there a lot. And that was totally awesome. Otherwise, maybe kids can visit here and there, but at the same time, it's kind of like I wouldn't have my kids come when I worked at a factory or a restaurant. So I'm not gonna bring them regularly to set, but if they want to come and learn, and as they get older, like if it's something that they found professionally interesting, then yeah, absolutely. But I don't foist it upon them.
But you don't work in a factory. I mean,
No,
that's
I
the.
don't
I
work in a
mean,
factory,
a sausage factory, perhaps. That would keep
I dream sausage factories.
So, I mean, one of the nice things about Deadpool and Wolverine as well is we, as much as it's this big, huge film, we know precious little about the actual making of it. I found that with the first 2 Deadpool films, a lot of it you all managed to keep behind closed doors, really, and quite secretive.
Funny anecdote for you. I remember on Deadpool 2, there's a lot of people wearing superhero costumes. Not my guy. And I remember when we were filming on locations that they asked me to wear a black cloak over my outfit so that like paparazzi. And I was like, yeah, but it's just normal clothes. They're just going to think I'm a normal guy. They're like, put on the fucking cloak. And I was like, okay. So yeah, it's cloaked in secrecy.
But I mean, because you've hinted the heart of making something this is quite small. That's why I'm quite interested in that. That that when you talk about Deadpool 2 being relatively almost treated low budget once you're actually in the midst of it. How small is the core of making something like this? Well, it's a boring question. I'm just fascinated by it.
It's sort of it's both because it is obviously a massive film by any yardstick you could measure. But at the same time, this film, which obviously costs a lot of money, a lot of people are going to see it, and it has crazy costumes and set pieces and insane things. But some of the funniest stuff, like some of the greatest joy for me on set, was like seeing. Obviously, Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool is hilarious. Like that's nobody challenges that. But I was laughing so hard anytime Hugh Jackman as Wolverine like furrowed his eyebrows at him. and gets fed up. Like when he's silently fed up with Deadpool, take after take, I would laugh and laugh. And the payoff for that is going to be a tight shot on Hugh Jackman's face, no muscles visible, no suit visible. You're just going to see his eyes furrow. It could be the same shot in an independent film that did shoot 12 pages a day. And some of the biggest sort of juice you're going to get out of it is laughing at him being like, you fucking clown tool. It was funny every time, every take. And I love that because for all the planning you put into a crazy motorcycle stunt, you know what I mean? Which, yes, those are great, but also great, and woe to the filmmaker who forgets this, is a close up on Hugh Jackman's face, regardless of the background going, like some of the cheapest shots in this are going to be the best.
I think there's a shot right at the start of Edge of Tomorrow, isn't there? With Tom Cruise that they basically added towards the end, just in the edited suite, where they needed just a shot at the last minute, just turned the camera there.
I love it.
And I think
I believe that.
I think it's the film Sneakers as well, where the last shot was $21.
Yeah.
They added. I love stuff like that.
Intoxicating.
The reason I say this and kind of ask this, just to kind of bring the barriers of entry down into film, because for me, growing up in the West Midlands, not the most glamorous part of the world, film was pretty much impenetrable.
Yeah.
People weren't telling stories of actually, this is really at heart just a bunch of human beings gathering together with some money and equipment to get things done, which is why I kind of think these stories are really important, like the smaller stories. Yeah. I'm curious, when you were growing up, were there any of these stories around you? Was there a point where you felt you had permission to go into this world?
So I didn't come from like an entertainment background or anything. But I did, as soon as I, around 12 or 13, like started getting up on stage in like little comedy skits to like introduce the talent show and like come up with the character and stuff. And I was like, I really enjoy this. And then started auditioning for plays at school when I'm 14. I was always very encouraged by my family. They were supportive and proud, and so I did feel my parents, despite not coming from any sort of background like that, were always very encouraging. So yeah, in terms of, you use the word permission, yeah, certainly they were like, go for it, buddy. And then they would go sell insurance.
Yeah. You mentioned just before, my questions are all over the place, you probably noticed, but you mentioned just before about there's some stuff where you're the boss on things, there's some stuff where you're kind of the employee. And I look at the Rob Delaney movie universe. We need a name, the Riddimu or something like that. And I see you taking on what look to be like really fun roles in things like Hobbs and Shaw and in Last Christmas, both of which #1 box office hits. Presumably that's down to you as well. In fact, it says that on Wikipedia. It points out that these are two #1 box office hits on your Wikipedia page.
Not bad.
As if that, well, it clearly is entirely down to you.
I think that was I'm the X factor.
But when you're the employee on something like that, is there a little bit of the boss in there? I might take this on to what I want to do next. Does it change the scale, the ambition, the storytelling that you want to do?
I mean, one of the best parts about any job is learning. And so I really try to remember that. What can I learn? What can I take from this opportunity and apply it in the future? And so I'm always trying to see what other people do and emulate it or avoid it if it doesn't look like it's working. And then also trusting them, you know what I mean? Like I would almost never say to a director, like, I don't think my character would do that. I'll just do it. Why?
Yeah.
Because they said so. You know what I mean? And that probably came from being the boss and encountering an actor who was like, "Are you sure that I would do that?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure you would do it." And then do it and do it a few different ways, and we'll figure it out together. But we both want it to be good,
And these roles that are coming up I think inevitably I start thinking Hobbs and Shaw, Last Christmas, things like that. Mm-hmm. Would you say that that's kind of an indirect result of Deadpool 2 in the first place? That
I mean, if anybody acquits themselves well in something and doesn't screw up, then then other work begets work. So I always try. Yeah, one of my big things that I like to do when I am the employee is show up on time, be really nice, and do what they ask several times, before I offer any of my silly ideas.
I've just done another interview just before you, again with someone for an independent film. And we spent about 5 minutes of that conversation talking about the importance of treating people properly on the set.
Yeah.
And that it's such the old cliche that a really good film comes out of a really tense set, and just trying to like call bullshit on that a little
Yeah,
bit.
that's crazy, of course.
Yeah. So I mean, it sounds when you're on. I mean, you've given us the Deadpool and Wolverine example there, and it just sounds like you're watching as much as anything
Oh,
else.
big time.
Yeah.
You want to learn, you know what I mean? Because learn, steal,
Yeah.
absorb, share. Maybe I learned something on my last thing that I could tell them about that would help, you know? So it's just, the more what goes around comes around. Be nice, help out, carry your load.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I'm a huge fan of Paul Feig, for instance.
Yeah.
You've done a couple of his films, and I watched his directorial style and just his willingness to follow the joke and his willingness to go. So I mean, when you're in the midst of something like that, contrasting with like a Fast and Furious, contrasting with a Mission Impossible, is like that kaleidoscope as much of the appeal to you, or is it just like you going a bit with the flow?
Big time. And it's always fun to see how different directors get what they need, like Sean Levy on this film was so great. It was such a pleasure to be directed by him. And his notes are often small, and there'll be things he'll come at it from like a more oblique manner than a lot of people would, He'll be like, "Oh, that was good. Hey, on this one, do it. Why don't you do it like in a higher register? Kind of sing the line." You know what I mean? And like that's like a weird thing to say, but then you do it and you discover something new, and he's like, "Yes, that's what we needed." And so, trusting somebody who thinks differently than you do, and it's such a thrill.
And so, right near the start of this, you talked about how you spent the last 2.5 weeks writing. And I mean, by the time you got to Catastrophe, you'd written several things that hadn't made it through the process as well.
Yeah.
So, can you give us a flavour of what kind of things you're writing and the kind of stuff that you were writing before, where your head and your heart is at the minute?
I mean, right. All I care about, it seems, is tense domestic relationships.
Yeah.
Like anything I think of happens, inside a house or a hospital room.
You're the
or
Blumhouse of sitcoms.
Yeah, maybe.
Strip it down to a house and a couple of people. Yeah.
I mean, because to me, in my imagination and the art that I consume the most, there's nothing more. I mean, some of the more exciting films to me are not, bank robbery things, but like If Beale Street Could Talk, the intrafamilial arguments in that, to me, like that's what I want. Or, Before Midnight by Richard Linklater. Those things, because you can have a whole world between two people or three people. And I don't think I don't need to leave a room to have an exciting and robust, nutritious, emotional entertainment experience. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm thinking these days. Maybe one day it'll change, but it hasn't yet.
Yeah. And so are you writing for television or film? Are you looking to do a movie of your own?
I'm sure I have written films that haven't gotten made, but right now I'm writing for TV, and because I love relationships. I care more about who it happens to and how it happens than necessarily what's happening. So I'm more TV focused with my writing at this moment.
I mean, one of my favorite films of all time is Parenthood.
Oh, the best.
Yeah, which so ahead of its time in terms of like dealing with child mental health. In terms of the interlocking generational nature of family. That to me, and the reason I bring that up is I just think comedy is the most underrated form. That it's the Trojan horse to do so much. And I just wonder, in the writing that you're doing, certainly in what I've picked up of Catastrophe so far, unless you're telling me it's going really into a lot of horror thing, you're like, no, I'm fairly safe. Is comedy, I mean, going back to that 10-year-old, overhearing that joke, is comedy absolutely at your core?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I am a Lucille Ball disciple, in that it's okay to talk about whatever you want on TV, but if people are tuning in and giving you their time, then you have to entertain them too. I congenitally feel that I must make people laugh. I feel a responsibility.
Do people feel that responsibility to you?
I hope not, because I definitely don't feel it when I'm not on the clock. I'm not one of those people who has to be funny all the time. I find that exhausting. Stupid.
And so what, I mean, if you don't mind me asking as well, we're nearly at the end of our time here. It's just fascinating. You're lovely to talk to. But I'm just curious, what don't people ask you that you wish they'd ask you? Is there anything? I mean, you must sit through umpteen of these interviews. You've probably got umpteen of them today. Exactly the same
Maybe
questions.
cajoling stuff. Like, I wish people would yell at me to like do a musical, or why aren't you
Have
in
you
a
got any?
musical? No, I just want to be in one. So why haven't you kidnapped a big producer and made yourself be in a
Can help
musical?
on this.
Okay.
So the film The Beekeeper earlier in the
Oh,
year
yeah.
from David
Statham.
Ayer, who
Yeah.
directed Statham, God bless him.
Yeah.
Or you did Wrath of Man, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, David Ayer's done End of Watch and Suicide Squad. The
Mhm.
most surprising revelation I've had in an interview all
Mhm.
year is he wants to do a musical.
Okay, great.
So I think the two of you here, I'm going to be an
Statham
agent.
with
Shit,
yeah,
this is
yeah.
my new career.
I've already greenlit it. Yeah.
But do you, I mean, presumably though, people pigeonhole you to a degree into a certain kind of, you're going to do this role. So if there was a musical coming up, they're not coming to you necessarily.
Yeah, not all of, no. I mean, we've tried, but it hasn't worked out yet. But I want to do some musicals. So yeah, that's what I want people to ask me is, why aren't you in a musical yet?
Okay, my last question then before I have to wrap up. Would you be interested in doing a musical?
Oh my God, I'm so glad you asked. Yes.
It's about time someone did.
I really
I
would
think.
like to do one. Yeah. Thank
That's
you.
wonderful. Rob Delaney, this has been an absolute delight. Thank you so much for your time.
And that was my conversation with Rob Delaney. Deadpool and Wolverine is playing in cinemas around the world, as I said right at the start. And yes, you can go along, you can pay money, you can watch the film. That tends to be how these things work. It also all brings to the end this latest episode of the Film Stories podcast. As always, thank you so much for listening and thank you for your time. Much, much appreciated. If you do like this podcast and I've not bored you completely, you can find more from me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Simon Brew. Film Stories is on Twitter and Blue Sky at Film Stories. We're at facebook.com/Film Stories online, youtube.com/Film Stories. Our shop is store.filmstories.co.uk, where you'll find all of our print magazines and Blu-rays for sale too. And if you go to www.filmstories.co.uk, that is updated every weekday with movie news, reviews, features, television, games. We're trying to do a clickbait-free entertainment website. That's about as hard as it sounds as well, but we're still doing our damnedest with it. And then finally, if you want to put some money in the pot and support what we're doing here, if you go to patreon.com/Simon Brew, you get the podcast early pretty much every week. You get it ad-free as well. You also find out gossip of what we're up to behind the scenes. This episode is the start of the Film Stories summer break. However, I think some of you know I've been having a fairly difficult time with family illnesses and stuff like that behind the scenes. So I'm just going to take my usual bit of summer downtime. I may try and put one or two little bits and bobs live in the interim, but it'll be a couple of weeks before I'm back with the Film Stories podcast. Until then, you all look after yourselves. Thank you for your time, and I really appreciate all of your support. Bye-bye.